Okay, so let's have a look at the decks for the two players today. First up, we'll go through Jfilipeg, Felipe's decks. The first one here is Much Improved Nur of the Subway. Looks like a very interesting deck. Harvest Time giving a lot of urge ability in here.
You just instantly notice the 90 SAS there.
Yeah, very high expected amber at 29 as well.
Yeah, and the actual houses it has as well are like, they're all quite favourable. Shadows and Untamed.
Yep. Having the Eaton's Jar is always a fantastic card to have in a deck, just to shut stuff off in your opponent. If they've got a card you need to shut off, you can shut it off, or you can even shut off their artifact control.
True.
Lots of bounce effects and removals in here as well, with the lights out and the Lost in the Woods. Savage Clash for a great wipe. False Blessing with 9 mutants in here.
2 Bone Ithings is always nice as well. A bit like the Ronnies, but
yeah,
depends on keys instead.
And the Stirring Graves to get them back as well.
Oh, and the Stirring Graves into the Infernus as well. So you get a number for playing it, and then Infernus back to your archives.
Yeah. Yep. Fantastic. Yeah, it looks like a very, very good deck.
It's also got, by the look of it, it's got damage pips on some of the cards, which is great because he's got Keyfrog in there as well. So depending on where those pips are, you could forge an early key.
I think we can see that, actually. Yeah, and we can see it's the Stirring Grave that's got the double damage pips on, but you do have the Vault's Blessing and the Lost in the Woods with pips as well. So yeah, you would actually be able to... You could kill that Keyfrog on an untamed turn, on the turn you play it.
But even because if you've even got it on the field, then you can like damage pip, like blow it up sort of thing outside of house.
Yeah. Yeah. Looks like a great deck. Let's move on to the next one. Countess Bentactwiz Holmes. This also looks like a great deck. The Shadows jumps out at me.
Yeah.
Just great. I always love to see Nerf Blast and Relentless Whispers. Customs Office.
I like seeing board control as well. And you got the 2 gateways, but you also got Horizon there. So it's a little bit, covers you for if you're going to wipe the board, at least you got a chance of getting your own stuff back.
Yeah. I mean, there's a world in which you can gateway, Arise, flood the board with all your disc creatures, and then the Penth to get the Arise back, and then pull back all of your untamed creatures for the next turn.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good spot.
That could be pretty brutal. Customs Office as well, a good way to tax your opponent, make them think twice about playing some artifacts. Grasping Vines as well for artifact control. That's very nice. This looks like a fun deck. Quite slow though, not very good on the efficiency. Yeah, okay, looks like a great deck. Let's move on to the next one. And this is the Ice Queen of the Sparkles, I believe. I mean, straight away, Lateral Shift. What a card. One of the anomalies.
Play a card from that hand as if it were yours. It still has to be in-house though, doesn't it? So it's not cheating house.
No, it does cheat house as well.
It does?
Yeah. Yep. It cheats house.
Fair enough. Yeah, very good then.
It's a fantastic anomaly. The logo suite looks great. 2 dies with a hologramophone and a Titan Guardian, so you could get them behind taunt and get them warded.
Well, and it's got the Mimic Gel for a potential 3 die.
Yep.
You've also got Thorium Plasmate, which is good as damage, move things out of the way, like get rid of wards and whatnot, and information exchange for like anti-steal.
Yes. Or at least steal back anyway. And Master the Theory as well. If you get behind on board, you can just archive your hand.
Yeah, this deck actually looks like a lot of fun because, like, you got the Saurian as well, adding on to the cost of opponents' keys because you got, along with the Eddies, you got the Retors.
Yep. And 2 of those in there. And then 3 Ludos as well, meaning you can exalt away, and as long as those Ludos stick on the board, the Amber isn't going back unless you get word of returning or something like that on you.
Yeah. And then you're bumping up the opponent's keys and then being able to steal with Ronnie because it'll probably put them within that range.
Yep. And then in Shadows, Bren the Fanatic, which I love to see, but is there a way to kill it in-house? I'm not sure that there is, actually, because Eclipse just shuffles, so won't kill. Yeah, interesting. But you could then you can Brend and then stomp it the next turn.
That's true.
To get that steal off there.
Just having the stomp to be able to do that is a nice addition.
And I always love to see a couple of Ronnies, especially with the Eddies, so you can push people up to over 7, so you can get true value from those Ronnies.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on and have a look at George's decks. So first up, we've got Razormaw, and straight away from me, double Control of the Week, Restring Hunters. Ugh. Disgusting.
Control of the Week, just yeah, every time. It's so hard to, like, you're basically just getting a turn if you call the right house.
Yep. Agreed. Sigil of Brotherhood in Sanctum with 5, 6 creatures in there. If you can get a Sanctum board out and then go into another house and still use those 6 Sanctum creatures, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah. And then, you've got that Jehu the Bureaucrat, which is every time you play Sanctum, you get extra amber.
Yeah. And it tends to go off more times than people think as well.
Yeah, then, you definitely don't want to leave it around for long.
Ghostly Hand is fantastic as well with things like the Relentless Whispers in here. So you can get there's ways in here, Relentless Whispers, Moon Cursor, to get your opponent down to 1 amber, to then be able to Ghostly Hand and steal that last one, just to add insult to injury. There's a lot of steal in that Shadows, actually.
Yeah, and
looks like
a good few options for stunning things as well. So it's got control, it's got steal, it's got a lot of control actually with the dis as well on top of the stuns and then stealing.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, because the Maxina is incredible as well for that stun effect. Okay, let's move on and look at the next one. Tenebris of Lobo Room Prison. Okay, Maverick Candle Unit. Triple E die. Wow. There is so much archive in here. That's ridiculous. The 3 E dies, the 2 Tau Taus. Tau Taus. Library of the Damned. Information Officer Grey as well. Wow, you can really... I think you could get up to some shenanigans with this deck.
I like the double red alert as well for, if you can't get a board out, then those are great for just clearing up the opponents.
Yeah. That and the Entropic Swirl as well, actually. Great for creature control. Looks like a fantastic deck. The Star Alliance suite looks very nice, actually. With the Ingram and the Kirkar and Frayne as well. Some of the best cards in Star Alliance in Worlds Collide. Wow. Looks like a lot of fun to play. Let's jump on to the next one. Charlatan Theodora Turbo Smack. And so, I mean, straight for me, the Untamed just jumps right out at me. Lost in the Woods, fantastic. Punk is great disruption. Double Volt's Blessing and a Dav with 10 mutants in the deck. That's just incredible. So, yeah, Volt's Blessing, ridiculous with 10 mutants. And then the Dav giving you each E mutants +2 power, and you draw a card each time you play one of them as well.
potential for a huge amber game turn.
Yeah. Double Axiom of Grist for control when you don't have the board. And Word of Returning as well is awesome.
It's great for, from Worlds Collide onwards sort of thing. Just being able to ping back all that amber to you is just really strong at this point. But then, I mean, it's even still got axioms on there for controlling, clearing up the board. Borrows in there, which is good versus the artifacts.
Yep. Do like Borrow as a card. Just yonk somebody's artifact away from them and make use of it. I think all 3 houses in here look fantastic. Looks like a lot of fun to play. And it's only 77 SAS. Wow. Wow. I mean, on the face of it, it's like the amber control isn't particularly high in here.
Yeah. It's got a few things. You got the Faust the Great.
Yeah. The Faust, the Spoils of Battle. I mean, Spoils of Battle with Ancient Power is a fantastic little combo.
You got Boon Knitting back in there again.
Faust is great. You've got the Ludo there, which you can then use to stop that amber going back to the opponent. Especially if you can get Ludo out with amber on him, and then you can Axiom to also ward him. It can get ridiculous. It looks like a great deck.
Does look fun.
Hello everyone, this is Tom from Team Exalted, and today I have with me Kieran again.
Hello.
And we're just about ready to get underway with Jfilipeg versus GJ999, and we can tell you that Jfilipeg banned Charlatan, and George banned Much Improved Noor of the Subway. And we're going to get underway. And we have Der Eisknig des Funkels, I'm sure I've murdered that, for Jfilipeg, and Razormore for George. And so George starts out with a Gabos Long Arms. Interesting pair of decks, these two. Jfilipeg's with a lateral shift in there, and pops an Edai straight out on the board, and a Hologramophone, and a Thorium Plasmate, and passes the turn. Yeah, and the Hologramophone already there to come online to ward that Edai. So unsurprising that George goes into Dis and takes it out the way, and then controls the weak him into Logos. A second Eve, right? Wow. How much money on this getting warded? Yep, there we go.
Now 2 cards in archives.
And George straight into Shadows. TMTP played for the Amber.
Gone very quickly.
And Relentless Whispers on his own Gabos. Wow, yes. Because he could destroy it and then Ghostly Hand to then steal the last one as well. And gets the ward off. I'm pretty sure that will come back fairly quickly, but that is a burst of speed.
Very nice. Straight up to 8 Amber. Passing on check.
Super quick moves from George there. Jfilipeg having a bit more of a considered response to this one. And goes into Logos again. See that Edai get warded.
So the benefit is that because of the cards in archive, the key it does actually cost 8 at the moment.
Yes. Yep. So George forges that first key, but gets taxed to 8 for it. Oh, and another one of those Ghostly Hands. Wow. Straight up to 4 Amber for George.
Really seeing the speed with the Shadows house at the moment.
Okay. We've got a miskick from Jfilipeg there. I'm assuming he's chose the wrong house. But he stayed with it anyway.
Chimer Eclipse.
Yeah, very interesting.
Things off the ward, right?
Yep. And then the Trust No One to steal another. Simon is a very annoying little card. And so George throwing down the Sigil of Brotherhood. Lady Maxina putting a shoulder armor on the Maxina and a cleansing wave for just the single amber. And passes it. Yeah.
Do you think we'll see the house that Jfilipeg meant to choose last turn?
I suspect so. And it's Saurian. Now he has lateral shift in that Saurian suite, so. Okay. What have we got? Retagallum. Getting rid of that Smiling Ruth. Scoot him on that Gallum. Wow. Okay.
Quite nice. So, goes up to 5 amber plus his turn.
Yeah, pushes George's cost up to 9. Which he'll probably continue to do with that Scootum on that Retagallum if it's left to live. I mean, George has the option here to go outside Sanctum because he can still use that Sigil to push the Maxina into the Gallum to get rid of it if he wants to. But chooses to go into Dis. Snudge, Stealer of Souls. Yeah, and then discards the Sigil. And as predicted, that Gallum dies and then Control the Weak. Jfilipeg back into Saurian again. So this is twice we've seen the Control the Weak come down and push the player straight into the house that they've just called, which is usually a sensible move. Oh, Tricerian Legionary. Gonna ward the Edai maybe?
I would have thought so, yeah. Unless he might be wanting to use that for fighting. Oh, no. So
yeah, he's warded the Legionary. And a Tribute.
Tribute as well to capture the Ember to protect it a little bit. Passing turn, check on 6.
Yeah. Wow, but George, I mean, you can see a line of play in Dis here, right? Reap with the Snudge, use a Hologramophone, ward the Stealer of Souls. Smash it into something. Purge it. And gain an Amber. Been great for getting rid of those Edis if he can get into one of them. But George is having a good think here. Very interesting. Let's have a look, see what Jfilipeg has played in his discard. So, mostly Saurian and Logos. Is probably a Shadow's turn coming up from Jfilipeg at some point. And George played a lot of his Dis and his Shadows here. So maybe thinking about whether to... I suspect he's thinking about whether to take Jfilipeg off the key or not. And then he goes to Dis. Tendrils of Pain to get the ward off. The Tricerian. Stealer of Souls to kill it. Snudge to return the Jar Goggle. Oh, and then the Terror as well. So gets himself to check, but passes over to Jfilipeg, who forges the first key. His first key. And into Shadows. 2 Ronnies coming down.
Stealing 2 and then 1.
Yeah.
The Snudge, getting rid of the Jar Goggle is quite good, right? Because it gets rid of the card underneath without having...
It does indeed. Yep, correct. And discarding the Hawk there. Doesn't want to get rid of his own Hologramophone, which is understandable. And George not having any artifacts in play. And only having the Sigil of Brotherhood in that deck anyway. We're not going to see that for a little while. No point holding on to that Hawk.
No. And like 2 Ember would probably be nice, but at the same time, you probably want to keep that Hologramophone to protect the E-Dice.
Well, that's it. I'd be tempted to do it if it was going to push you to check for a key, but if it's not going to, then there's no point wasting the value you can get out of that hologramophone.
Yeah, and it's quite clever at the moment because he's got the runnies on either flank. It means that the Snudge Reap or fight could be tricky.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Into Dis. Return and Restring Hunters him into Logos. Okay. So George there saying if you're going to have to use that Ed-Eye, get one more damage on it onto the Restring Hunters here. But he can ward it first, right?
Yeah, he can do that. It leaves it in the same position, but because things are getting damaged, unless you're playing Sanctum, Sanctum could fight it without taking damage. But the others are all kind of in the range of getting destroyed as a trade.
Yeah. They certainly are. Let's see what Jfilipeg does here. How much Logos
the fighting from the disc, because you had the Terror fight one runny, and then because the Snudge fought the other runny, then the effect triggered to be able to return the Logos plant to the hand.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of it working out.
So then he goes to Saurian. And here comes the lateral shift. Oh, I wonder what he rips from George's hand. Tendrils of Pain. Oof. But that's it. That's all we see. So then George comes down into shadows. Urchin, old Bruno, Moon Cursor. Takes all of Jfilipeg's amber, captured, and gets himself to almost check for that second key. And an information exchange to steal 2. Jfilipeg here. Now, interesting position here, because if Jfilipeg puts any creatures down, then those Moon Cursors come online. And he probably doesn't want to give George that amount of stealing options. Warding the Ed-Eye.
Yeah, trouble is it does the same with that. It buys it a turn sort of thing. Oh, that's good. He gets rid of one.
Got rid of one of them. Or perhaps he's coming down. And a Jar Goggle. That's interesting.
The poison on them is brutal because it just, nothing's safe really, unless you got the elusive. But
I totally agree. I can imagine. And he copied the Lady Maxina with the Mimic Gel. But I can see. Yeah, so getting to stun the Moon Cursor, great move there. Oh, but George with the blinding light. Wow.
Stand for stands.
And Reaping with the Maxina. Zakiel, remove the stun from the Moon Cursor. Jehu. And then a Terms of Redress to capture 2 onto the Zakiel. So George on check here. Jfilipeg goes into Logos. So a Thorium Plasmate. Going to pop that old Bruno and get that Amber back. Titan Guardian comes down next to the Ed-Eye. We're going to see a lot of stun removing here. And warding the Ed-Eye. So it's now behind Torn and Ward. But nothing in the archives at the moment. Okay. George forges that second key. And in time-honoured tradition since the anomalies came out, it's nothing but the red key. Anything but the red key that gets forged.
One day it might change.
Well, hopefully we'll see some other creatures or artifacts one day that are affected by the other key colours. That will be interesting future development.
That'll be great. George having a quick think now. Getting a good lineup from the Logos there.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he? Also into Sanctum for George, gaining 2 amber from that Jehu. What has he got in Sanctum here, though? Yeah, got to get rid of that Hapsis. That makes a lot of sense. Once those things get warded, they're very dangerous. Opting for a couple of reaps here. I guess the strategy here is to just rush now. Just needs to get to that 3rd key as quick as he can.
Yeah, he can keep the pressure on because each turn that he's just gaining more amber, it's harder and harder to stop the forge.
Yeah.
Jfilipeg does have things like the Jar Goggles and the Rito Galims, and then the higher George goes, the Ronnies are going to be more effective when they come back around.
Yeah, very true. But he doesn't have any scaling amber control, so got to be careful. And the board is starting to run away from him a bit here as well. So Jfilipeg into Logos. Returning the Mimic Gel to his hand, which comes down as a copy of an Edite, and that gets him to archive something and pump that key cost up. So here we go. Both of them now are going to be warded, I suspect, and are both behind the taunt of that Titan Guardian. Yep. I wonder what he's got under that Jar Goggle.
Oh, actually, he just said to
get rid of the Jehu.
Yep.
There's a lot of value for him in that. Oh, and it's a Hawk. And there we go. Gets rid of his own hologramophone now for the value. Needs to get himself to that 2nd key.
Yeah, that's a decent move. A good bump up in amber there, so he's up on check, finishing with 9 amber for that turn.
Yeah, because the only thing George has is the TMTP that can take too much, and that's may come back round fairly quickly, actually. So good Shadows turn there.
Managed to get rid of both Edites. Poison Wave.
Now the Mimic Gel is still there as an Edie. Pushing him up to 7, but he's in check on 7. Jfilipeg into Shadows. Vinda, Duskrunner. Oh, and a Brand. And that's it. Good game. We'll be back shortly with the next match. And we're back, everyone. And so Jfilipeg opting to go first here in the 2nd game and switching decks to Countess. And George is on Tenebris. And so Jfilipeg goes first and pops down a customs office. And George quickly out the blocks as well with an Information Officer Grey, archiving a Bloodshard Imp, the walls, and then an Ingram toward the Information Officer Grey. Filipeg into Shadows, Relentless Whispers to kill the walls, and a Nerve Blast, and pass to George. A lot of these games in this KFPL seem to go very quick the first few turns while people get their game up and established. But George, another Star Alliance turn here, and now has a well-established Star Alliance board of warded nonsense. And back over to Jfilipeg. Jfilipeg into Untamed. Nepenthe Seed. Puts away the bear on the Ingram. Giving it Assault 2 just for the amber. Must be painful to do though.
Is this game 2?
Yes, it's game 2. Okay, so George having a think into Star Alliance again. Pops a Franz Blaster on Grey and then reaps with him. Archives a Malison. So there's quite a lot of disc going into that archive there from George, and George on check passes over to Jfilipeg. Goes into Dis himself. Schuler to take George off check. Fantastic. And a Pit Demon. But that's it. Just 2 cards. Finally balanced here. And so then George into Dis with a Snaggler, Evil Eye to push key cost up and bins the Harbinger of Doom. Pretty sure he doesn't want his own board blowing up. And Jfilipeg rapidly into Shadows here. Are we going to see that long fuse mines pop?
Nerve Blaster still one, making sure that he's getting him off check.
Yep. Holding him back. Pawn sacrifice to get rid of the wards and get rid of the Medic Ingram to stop that shenanigans going on.
Yeah, it's a nightmare to get rid of Ingram when she keeps warding everything.
Yep. And then Nepenthe to pull back Relentless Whispers to get rid of the Snaggler and steal another one. Puts himself on check with 9. And George straight into Logos. Group Think Tank. Daughter. I wondered if we were going to see some E-Dice here. That archive was already stacked, so pushes Jfilipeg's key cost up to 10.
Crikey.
And I wonder what he's archived there as well. I bet it's more Dis. Oh. Has a Maverick Candle unit in Dis as well. So Jfilipeg here with the Witch of the Eye, the Mamook. Discards the Dust Pixie though. That's interesting.
I guess it was because he doesn't want to get it blown up from the group tank.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. So George, Telltale Vapors to stack that archive a little more. And an Entropic Swirl to get rid of the Witch of the Eye. Interesting.
Officer Grey with the E-Dice is just great. Like, just having a way to accessibly put more into your archive.
Yeah. And anything you can do to stack it just really pushes things in your favour.
But then do you get a turn, like, because surely you get to a point where it's like, it's that choice that you have to make about when do you take your archive.
Yeah. Usually somewhere along the way to the last key. And discarding the hologrammophone here, not wanting to pay the customs office tax, and pops out another E-Die.
Key cost up to 18 there for Jfilipeg.
Wow, that's brutal. Both the E-Dies on the flank here, though, so that long fuse mines, I think we might see that. Oh no, because it's everything not on a flank. I'm thinking of the other one. Crikey.
Yeah, it's ideal position for that, really, isn't it? It does, although he can't use his group think tank. So he's kind of, I mean, for one of the E-Dies anyway, so it might help Jfilipeg, where he'll be able to play more things adjacent to each other.
Yes, this is true, because that group think tank is offline for its action, pretty much. Depends if there's something juicy enough goes down from Jfilipeg, but I suspect he's still going to be cautious and play around it. I think it's something that every Keyforge player gets used to. After that, those think tanks being in the game for long enough.
Blowing everything up.
But 18 cost is brutal. And so Jfilipeg into Dis.
Mind Barb.
Mind Barb. Oh, discards another E-Die at run. Wow.
That's quite fortunate, I think.
A nice hit, George says, and very right he is too. And then we get a poltergeist, which he uses on the long fuse mines just to pump out some damage. Just having a look in the discard to see what Jfilipeg has actually popped out. I suspect we're due another Untamed turn soon. Pit Demon to take out that group think tank. Oh, and then a Drumble.
Yeah, it's a good plan.
Yeah, it is a good plan. And where does George go here? Can go into Logos and get rid of that Drumble with those Edis, but maybe has something else. Has a Twin Bolt. I don't think we've seen the Twin Bolt played yet, have we? He goes into Logos. Twin Bolt would be an effective wipe here at this point. Reaping with both the Edis. And an Entropic Swirl. And then out comes and the Twin Bolt at the end. And over we go to Jfilipeg, goes into Untamed. And just lays down 3 creatures and passes the turn. And so George forging that first key and already on check for the second. Goes into Star Alliance. Oh, Kirkar next to one of those Edis. Gives the Information Officer Grey Skirmish. It's now 7 power, 3 armor. What does he take down? The Big Twig or the Bear? And a Walls, which allows him to go and get another upgrade. I suspect he hasn't got any left. Takes out the Big Twig with the Grey. Archives the Candle unit. He's got quite a lot in that archive at this point.
He got to use the Frames Blaster to deal the 2 damage to Dew Fairy as well.
Yeah.
Nice way to just reduce the size of the board.
Jfilipeg using the Curiosity there to kill both of those Edis. Being a scientist creature.
That is perfect. Like, just what he needed. Because now, he's back on par. He's got 12 amber, 6 key cost. You can match him up for 2 keys to 2.
Yep. Exactly. He's on check for 2 keys. George's deck will cycle round, so I suspect we'll see those Edis coming back out soon. This is where he's at the mercy of the shuffler, really. They both are.
Well, now George has got his archive that he could play with, so he's got all those things he's been storing up. It's whether or not he decides to use it, or does he keep them there for when the Edis resurface?
Yep. And in we go into Dis. Doesn't take the archive, though. Oh, we've got an Exhume for an Edi out. Stops him again. That's brutal. Jfilipeg with a Snudge and a Terror. Oh, and a Shaffles as well.
Yeah.
There's no point with that Snudge. There's no. It is. There's no point snudging the Edi because you're just going to stack his archives even higher. So where is George going to go here?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can fight the Eddie with the Snudge, and then can he bounce the Officer Grey with that? Oh, there we go, it's gone.
And Snaglet archive now as well. There's a whole lot of Dis in George's archive here.
Pushing key costs up to 15.
Oof. I guess the trick here for Jfilipeg, though, is just keep collecting amber, and if you can get those Edis off and keep them off, then you are going to be in a fantastic position to rush Forge. but you've also got to keep George off while you're doing it. George running away with this, I think, though. Let's see what Jfilipeg does. Into shadows. A nerve blast on the walls. And a bait and switch. Oh, old school bait and switch would have been fantastic at this point. For George, not for Jfilipeg. And a shadow self comes down. But protecting the terror with it. May be afraid of that group think tank still.
So over we go. It's good to cover bases just in case.
Yeah. Over we go. George, what are we going to see here? Star Alliance leaving an archive there. So Frayne reaping and capturing. Ingram comes down and wards the E-die. Grey killing the Dodger. And then we'll probably see the damage from the Frayne's blaster end up on the Shadow Self. And archives a group think tank. Key cost for Jfilipeg now 16. Oh no, use the blaster to attach it to Frayne. So passes over to Jfilipeg. Into Dis. Oh, gateway. So gets himself
to get rid of the ward and then gateway.
Gets himself onto check. You've got to remember though. Yeah. I think George can look at the discard before the reshuffle. I think he's just asking Jfilipeg to wait before he moves. So we'll have a little pause here while George has a look. You've got to wonder if George has drawn into another one of those E-dies yet. And you've got to wonder what Jfilipeg can do from this position, really.
Well, because the 10 cards in archive, so if he can draw any of those, then it just makes it so hard to forge anything.
Yeah.
You're basically having to deal with the E-dies all the time.
George calling, probably quite rightly there, that an Arise might be incoming at this point, which you would probably Arise into Dis. Get yourself an instant board. Even so, at this point, the strategy for George is, again, it's still, I think, is keep him off check if you can, but rush.
Well, this would be interesting to see whether or not he does pick up his archive, because he'll have a lot to play with in there. So,
well, that's right, and he's got.
It might have all the keys just to rush a bit ahead and get that last key.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of stuff in Dis as well, right? That we've seen him put into that archive.
Yep.
And there's an Exhume lying around somewhere as well, which can rip back one of those E-dies. So we've seen, 7 Star Alliance and 1 Logos. We know that Dis is what the archive's full of, so George probably has a clutch full of Logos right now. Jfilipeg really having a good think here. And there goes the Arise, and all that Dis stuff comes back, and it's all coming down. Shula stealing 1. Shrek capturing. What do you do here? Do you keep hold of the Drumble? Terror gaining 2. Yeah, and opts to keep hold of the Drumble and the Shaffles here, just for that extra control to keep George off that last key if he needs it. So if we go to George, are we going to see the archives lifted here? I suspect not. If he has an Edai in hand, I think you may well see that come down. Oh no, into Dis. Oh, the Evil Eye. Exhume Edai. Here we go. And archives another card. Pushing Jfilipeg up to 20. What will Jfilipeg do here? Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
That's one of the big threats gone.
You've got to think that had that come earlier in the game for Jfilipeg, that might have changed the way this game played out, to be honest. And so George in with a hologramophone and a Tautau Vapor's daughter.
Well, considering how much has been in the way, like just stopping him from forging even his first key, he's done really well to like keep in a good position because he's still got his 14 number.
Yes, indeed.
Just needs to keep holding him off of check.
Oh, but yeah, and this is why he held on to that Drumble. Jfilipeg gets that first key here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things is since the gateway managed to clear the board out, it's allowed him to get a bit more of a board state back. So even if he puts down even if George puts down an Eddie here and gets hologramophone on it, you've got two potential creatures on the board to fight into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas
and I suspect
the board was just being kept clear, so it was really hard to actually deal with them.
Yeah, totally agree. Whereas having control of the board now puts him in a much better position. The Pit Demon, and we're going to see the Drumble, I'm certain, here. Yeah, there we go. Little piggy bank of amber. And discards the Shaffles. Okay, let's see what George does here then. Is this the time when he lifts that archive up? He can't let Jfilipeg keep this board like this, or he will run away with it. It's a great fight and great spirit as well from Jfilipeg here. Just really plugging away. Comment in the chat from Callum telling about how George's deck works. That he won't pick up the archive because he just gets into an infinite loop shenanigans with the E-dice. But one of them being purged, I think, might affect the applicability of that. So Jfilipeg into Dis, poltergeist the hologramophone toward his own Pit Demon, and there we have it. George has won the game. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. What are we both doing? Good game, both of you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Two great games.
Yeah, great games. You played really well, George.
Yeah, you too. Felipe. Yeah, some amazing games. I'm sorry about the mistake. To be honest, I was literally about to type. I was about to ask what it was. If you'd have asked, I'm sure I wouldn't have minded taking back, just calling, picking up the archive at the wrong time or something like that. But fair play for owning it and everything else. It was like I say, some amazing games. I'm sorry if it did cost you the game.
Yeah, the only thing is that after doing that, I thought that we could use the tracker after the game to check the cards, but
oh yeah.
Still, you would see the cards that I would have archived.
Yeah, it's hard to fix that one. Fair, isn't it? So yeah, I get it.
So yeah, and that matchup was.
That last game seemed a bit brutal at points, to be honest with you. Your key cost was just going through the roof, AP. It was insane.
The issue there was that both my gateways were on the last 5 cards at least.
Yeah, I kept just waiting and expecting for that gateway arise to come up, and obviously didn't come up till right at the end there, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, I had the arise the whole game, but since I had to...
You can't hold the seed, can you, in that game with my poltergeist being about, so that makes sense.
Yeah. But how did the testing felt for you, George? On these matchups?
On those ones, it really depended, I think, what you hit with the lateral shift, with how the games went in the one match, and in the other, I was reasonably confident as long as you didn't get to purge 2 of the Edis with Oubliette. If you could Oubliette, Nepseed Oubliette, I was in trouble. But outside of that, I think I was okay in that matchup. I was a bit more worried about the other one because you might have built a bit of a board, or if I again actually right at the start of that game when I had 2 red alerts in hand, I was very remiss to ditch them because the other way I lost that game was in my testing was when you gatewayed a rose and then I didn't have a way to quickly answer it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know about yourself.
Yeah, I felt the same. So the second game, I felt that I felt very, very good. The only issue would be because your deck is extremely slow, and this was about the other 2. This was the same thing. If it was the Dakota or the World Skylight deck, because the deck was so slow, I was able always to set up and get away with the combo.
Yeah.
And on the other deck, all my steel and the brand and the mimic gel would make the difference in this match. And the thing was the on both decks, if you started with a strong Star Alliance like you did,
yes, it's a great start.
Not as a wide board, but getting those the Medic Ingram and the Grey doing a lot of work.
Oh yeah, the early archive's great. It's just been able to keep doing quite nice, really.
Yeah, that would be the way to win against both decks, especially the Countess. But still, I felt that if I had if I was able to gateway on the right moment, because the deck is so slow, I don't need to arise right away, and I can stall you with my these creatures, with my this board, and you have a lot of damage on logos.
Yes,
which would control my board a little bit, but since I would be able to play shadows and steal and control the board.
Yeah, no, I mean, you played it great at the end there. I mean, you really played to all the options, right? I mean, played around my red alert, kept the shuffles back in case I went to 6, the drum ball in case I went to 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, played all the options.
George, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you were thinking when you saw this first deck, much improved Noor of the Subway?
To be honest, I didn't need to look at it very long. It's an easy ban for me. I mean, it's a great deck. So it's got way too many problems for playing my decks. If you hadn't banned Turbo Smack, then you've also got your own mutants, which is a slight downside. The jar is annoying. I've got a poltergeist or a borrow in one deck, but the borrow doesn't help. Poltergeist, I can hit it once with Tenebris, but then you purge it with the Infernus, and I'm done because you jar Edi. And yeah, so it was an easy ban. It was like a 5-minute decision of that one for me. But when I was doing my testing, it was like, yep, that's nice and easy. So I didn't really look at it too much more.
Oh, to be honest, I didn't even test with this deck because looking at George's lineup, I thought that this deck would be. This is. I don't usually rank my decks, but I think this is far and away the best deck that I have, and it really is hard to play against it and to make a plan because it just has a lot of different answers, and you have a lot of bounce. You have creature and artifact purging with harvest time.
Yeah, great
and
card.
The thing is, when this deck actually it's a quick deck, so you can see it's 29 expected amber. But if you somehow get ahead, the deck really starts working with the Bonidings and the way to bounce them back and to get them back from the discard pile. And also the jar is such a hard card to work against, unless you have two different artifact control cards like Reclaim by Nature and a Poltergeist in your deck, something like that.
Yeah.
Or Harvest Time, like I do, which it's a really hard card to work against. And if you don't have artifact control in this deck, you will suffer, because I can just name your two best cards, or if you have triplets or four of the same, you just change your deck. So it's a really hard deck to play against. Although it doesn't win every match like any deck, but and I feel very comfortable playing it. It's not, if you test it, it's not a easy deck to play. It has a lot of things, but it's tricky to play.
It certainly does have a lot of tools, and I can see the issues for your decks, George, with the high mutant count in here as well, and with the Vault's Blessing. Whenever I get a deck with Vault's Blessing, I always end up with like 3 mutants or something.
It was just a really bad matchup across the board for me, so I was like, yep, it was a nice easy ban.
Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is Countess Bentact with Holmes. And this is the one we just saw in the last match played. What were your thoughts on this one, George, then?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess on this one, for both my matchups, with Tenebris, I was hoping to do pretty much what I did, just raise the key cost and try and control the board. It was for either Razormere or for Turbo Smack, it was just hoping I could outrun it, and again, making sure I had an answer for when that Arise finally came around. I was lucky enough that obviously Tenebris and Turbo Smack both have some sort of artifact control for the Nep Seed, so because I get the feeling you normally like to try and keep that on the board for the Arise when it came around, in case you had to chuck it early or for another high value target. So nice to have that. But yeah, I thought it was a winnable matchup. Like I said, there was potentially some bad ways it could go for Tenebris in that last one. If you'd have managed to get the Oubliette off twice, I thought I might be in trouble. Or anything like that. Or if you managed to just get a big disboard out, but I was hoping to normally always be able to red alert it or hit it with just a bunch of Logos damage. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a great deck.
The Nepenthe could have helped with double Oublietting some Edides. I suspect the Oubliette didn't come early enough for you, Felipe.
Yeah, it was also one of the last cards. So the issue with this deck, I think this deck it's really, really good. The issue is it doesn't have any efficiency. So it really depends on like the other deck, but because of different reasons. This deck is really hard to master it, because you have to play it in a way that you have to go for the combo. If it's playing against an inferior level deck, you don't need the combo, so the deck is easier to play. But if you're playing against great decks like here on the KFPL, you need to go for the combo most of the times, and so you need to know when to hold cards and when not to hold cards. Like I said, I hold the Arise the whole game. I only left. So what I did was on my first hand, I was the first player. I had 5 Shadows cards, which is not great because one of them was Nerve Blast and Pawn Sacrifice without any creatures. But what I thought was I could play the Customs Office, which would negate the Hologramophone, and probably because on most of the matches on when I was testing, I usually had the board advantage, but in this game it was the opposite. So what I did was to play the Nerve Blasts, play the Relentless Whispers on the next turn, and hold the Pawn Sacrifice because of the Magic Ingram. I was hoping for a creature, which I have plenty, 17 in this deck, and so I could play it and then Pawn Sacrifice and get a Magic Ingram out of the table. So, but that went very wrong because the gateways were on on the end of my deck, and I ended up really messing up my draw. So, like I said, I thought that five Shadows card would be very good for the efficiency, but the way I played the start of the match and having one of the cards being a Rise, I knew that I should probably go quicker, but in the end, holding the Pawn Sacrifice is not the best play there. But it's a really tough deck to beat if you know how to play it. If you don't, you will not get what the deck does, because you'll get stuck, you'll get bad draws, you will play cards on the wrong moment, and that happens with all the decks. But if your deck has 10 efficiency or 20 efficiency, it doesn't show as much, and in this case it shows a lot. But yeah, I think when I'll talk about the decks, about George's decks, I'll talk about a little bit what I thought, what this deck was capable of doing.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which I think I murdered the pronunciation of this game. Let's just call it Funkles. What did you think about this one, other than the complicated name, George?
It's the Ice Queen of Sparkles.
Thank you.
So yeah, as I ended up calling it in testing, just Sparkles, I believe it was. So yeah, I mean, again, an amazing deck. I think the one thing, in particular in the first matchup, that I was trying to target in this particularly was to use my Sanctum, keep some of the board like reasonably clear, and then just use your lack of removal to try and get a Restring Gunter's Lock, or at least to give me a few turns breathing room just to rush past it. And it wasn't far off, I don't think, that Lateral Shift. I was really hoping you didn't have it in hand, but because obviously knowing you'd lost, the Kymor, I think at the time the Stomp had gone, and I think there was only the Thorium that was left in deck. So I was hoping to try and get a good lockout with this, but apart from that, I mean, a great deck with loads of amber control in all the different houses. So it was really hard, particularly for Razormere, to try and pick a control the weak target to put this into if I was trying to force through a key. So yeah, an amazing deck. Like I say, annoyingly, your first deck was so good, I couldn't even consider banning this. So it was a really tough lineup to try and to work my way around. But hey, felt a bit luckier on the day. I genuinely expected to go right into hopefully. I was hoping 3 games because I thought it'd go the other way, to be honest. But yeah, this was a fantastic deck. So it's got everything.
It has, and the Mimic Gel is a real star as well, I think, in here, right?
Yeah,
being able to.
The stars here are Mimic Gel and Lateral Shift, because you see it has 4.5 creature control, but Mimic Gel and Lateral Shift give you 6 question mark points.
Yes.
Which usually I use to, if I can't control the board using my creatures, that I usually do, I use those points as creature control. making Mimic Gel, copying the biggest creature, or even a taunt like Tricerian Legionary or Titan Guardian. When I started to playing this deck, I used him to copy Eddies, but that's not the way to play this deck.
Yeah, it seems like a mistake that a lot of people would make. I think if they tried to play it, they'd probably copy something like that, or the Gallum or something to try and use it as amber control. But no, I can see why you'd copy a big creature or something with board control. But I really liked the Maxina choice. Just obviously having the ability to bounce it back to your hand then and change it is great.
Yeah, one time I did Maxina, which, like I said, it's creature control, so I can stun and then kill other creatures. But what I did one time was copy Maxina. My opponent played. No, I played Restringantes playing Lateral Shift and then return Mimic Gel to hand. And Restringantes.
Goodness, about the two houses. That's spectacular.
Yeah. That was the high point of my testing week. But still, in the matchup, this deck did really well. As I'll talk about the matchups and I'll talk about your games. But yeah, this deck can also be really, really misplayed if you don't know the deck.
For sure, but it looks like a lot of fun to play as well.
Yeah, I love the times when you archive all the shadows and then your opponent seems to get rid of the dice, and then I just steal everything back, which is cool.
Okay, let's move on and talk about George's decks. So, Razormore.
Yeah, when I saw this deck, it looked like the right ban. The first deck that I thought about banning, but then testing the matchups, and usually that's what I do. I start testing the deck that I think will be the ban. I felt really good against it, especially with the Ice King. I felt that this deck can always win any game with Gateway and the Control the Weeks and Restringantes. But I felt that as long as you didn't have a really strong start with Sanctum, like having the Jehu and the Lady Maxinas controlling the board, I felt really good about my matchup. And other than that, only too much to protect was a big concern. Not counting the Control the Weeks and the Restringantes. That just makes me play a little bit different. My hands, I'm not.
I must admit, I'm completely with you. I was hoping you were going to start with your own Coda deck when I picked this to go first, just because I definitely think this was the worst matchup. Into Sparkles, by all means. It was because I can't hold my own too much to protect. I can't get the Control the Weeks at the right time, or even hold the Gateway. Like I say, I think obviously the board control, like I say, was light in it, so I was like, okay, Restringantes might be able to do some work, particularly if I hold a big Sanctum board. But yeah, it was always going to be a tough matchup, I thought, into it, because I just can't normally hold the stuff that I would like to hold for the right time.
Yeah.
With that lateral shift
is really quick. And but
what would you say the star of this deck is, George, aside from the Restringantes Control the Week?
It's a great deck, right? It's got loads of high points. I always find the Jehu the Bureaucrat does way more work than you expect it to do. Got a very functional Sanctum board that you can use turn and turn again, and your opponents find hard to deal with. So it can do some work. But it's just a really good set of Coda cards, right? There's just a lot of pips in there and a lot of very decent steal and board control.
Personally, I always love to see Sigil of the Brotherhood. I just think it's, especially when you've got some big Sanctum creatures like you have in here, it can be brutal.
For sure.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. So, Tenebris.
Yeah. So when I saw this deck, this was the second ban. So after being able to have a big advantage with the Ice King and doing somewhat well with Countess, but like George said, it was the worst matchup there. I thought about banning Tenebris, but between this and Mass Mutation deck, I think both the decks that I previewed will not be banned. I think this deck would match up in my favor against both of those because it's really tough, and if you control the board really well, it just doesn't let you forge keys, and that's the only way to win the game, at least for now. And but the deck is really slow. So if you don't have a strong start with Star Alliance, the deck gets slow, and that gives me time to set up the combos on Countess, or set up the boards on Ice King, and then just win. Because if you can control the board and get rid of the Eddy protections, which are Hologramophone and Medic Ingram and Krikar, you can or make George always go logos and play the Eddies and then clean them up again, or you're just going to forge for 6. But yeah, I think the match went pretty well. So George plays extremely well for sure, but not archiving the evil eye and making it preventing it using it to prevent me to forge a key at the right moment with the Exhume on the other die. I think that gave him the game. So that's the small details that make a difference, and that make great decks. So it has his flaws, but still, if you exploit them, it still has ways to get its strong points on the game to make a mark. So yeah, that's what happened, and against the Ice King, it also enabled me to build a board and use my board to control the Eddies. So that's why I left it. But it's an extremely hard deck to play against.
There's a, like you say about getting a Star Alliance turn, a good one at the start, and getting Information Officer Grey out, I think is quite crucial as well to being able to pump up those archives. And there's a lot of archiving in here and a lot of recurrence in here. And I know that you get into some state with it, George, where you can just recur those E-dice. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, certain. I mean, like I say, it was a great start for me. The opening hand was about exactly what I wanted it to be. Been able to just drop the Information Officer Grey, and obviously I wasn't too bothered about the walls at that point, but the Ingram as well toward it, and then just been able to archive a discard I wasn't too fussed about. It was a great start. But yeah, this deck can definitely archive insane amounts of cards. And I've definitely got it to the point before where you just don't have enough cards left in the deck to ever, to carry on playing. At some point, you pull your archive and you start again. But yeah, it's a fun deck. I think Philippe's got the measure of it, to be honest. Covered most of it. It has got its flaws. The same thing against the Ice King was pretty much a case of I wanted to try and control the board as much as I could using the red alerts and the actions in Logos with all the damage that I could throw out. Keep an Edi on the board at all times and just keep those protections in place. I must admit, I nearly ended up playing the Hologramophone even with your customs office, to be honest. I'm not sure it wasn't the right call, given that your Poltergeist and I think the Grasping Vines had gone at the time. maybe I should have done, because I think the amber that I would have given you wouldn't have been hugely significant. I mean, it was close at the end, so maybe it would have made the difference. Who knows? But
I think at that point, having playing that at that point would have taken you off check. I think, George.
Yeah, it might have done. It would have been very close if it wasn't. But I mean, this wants to play a long game anyway, so necessarily sitting on check for one turn isn't the biggest thing for this deck. It's got longer term goals of getting a board set up, raising your opponent's key cost to a point they're never going to forge, and just consistently keeping that at that case. So yeah, I considered doing it, like I say. Whether it was the right choice or the wrong choice, I don't know, but it's something I nearly did, just because the extra protection for the E-dies is great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the next one. So, Charlatan.
This deck, I think it's not a 77 sets deck, because Dark Ember Vault here does a lot of work, and the 2 Vault's blessings are just can just be crazy. So the issue here was that this deck was the most reliant board of the 3, and the most chances to get really crazy bursts, and that's why I banned it. I tested it one time against the Ice King, and it was enough to see that I didn't want to play this deck.
Yeah, I can see why. To be fair, it's exactly what you said. It is, like I say, it's not a 77 SAS the slightest, is it? But and it's very much what it looks like, very rushy. Kind of like the Dark Amber Vault's blessing sort of stuff. So yeah, I get it. I get why you banned it.
And the Word of Returning is great as well in the current meta with all the capture flying around.
Yeah. So that just negates the Ludos that I have. Borrow just makes all the artifacts that I would play with both my decks useless or discards, and the board is just so huge as long as you play the Dark Ember Vault. So I would be happy to play against this deck if it didn't have the Dark Ember Vault. I could have not banned it and just get lucky to have it on the last cards, but I didn't felt like that's a good strategy.
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah, I must admit, of all the 6 decks I've looked at today, this is the one I look at with a little tinge of jealousy, especially at that Untamed Suite. It's just disgusting. Yeah. Fantastic.
And the anti-steal also, which is not great against both my decks. Which is great against both my decks.
Yep. Brilliant. All right, gents, thank you very much for talking through the decks. Is there anything about the matches, any points that came up that you think are worth discussing? Or I mean, one thing I'm interested in, George, is when you were archiving with all those E-dies and so on, we could see whenever you used the grey, you were putting a lot of dis stuff in the archive. Was that part of the strategy with it?
Yeah, for certain. I don't think I called dis once all game. Oh no, there was the one turn, twice maybe, but I only played about 3 cards. Because I think there was the one Exhume and the Evil Eye, like you said, and then an Exhume later, and maybe a couple of other cards. But I don't think a dis creature ever hit the board, at least. But yeah, so yeah, it was definitely part of the strategy, particularly for that game, and particularly when I got board control a bit earlier on as well. It was like, I'm probably not going to need the Harbinger. It's a bit slow to answer your own Disarise combo.
Yeah,
it had better tools in other houses to do it. So in this matchup, particularly, yeah, it was putting the Dis away that felt like the right move.
Yeah, and when you were archiving with Grey, I was just looking for 3 cards. Poltergeist, Exhume, and Evil Eye were the 3 cards that I was looking at.
Yeah, of course.
And because that what makes that Tenebris really great is you don't have any random archives, which could mess up the Eddies.
Yeah, for certain. There's nothing to accidentally put away, which is nice. So I did have a few inefficiencies. Like for example, I think when I exhumed the Udi in one turn, I archived my Orb of Invadus, despite the fact that I was on a dis turn, because obviously I think I'd exhumed it. So just because in that matchup, when I had the board control, it was like I didn't want to play this anyway, and I didn't want to archive any of my other non-dis cards at that particular moment, because I think it was a pretty good Logos hand I was holding. So yeah, so I ended up archiving that instead. So obviously would have given me an extra draw, but you don't want to clutter your archives in that deck.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And taking one house out just really improves your efficiency with the other houses.
Oh yeah.
We could really see that. And as I said, Philippe, I mean, it was interesting seeing you just continue to battle away when we're seeing your key cost just rise up 11, 12, 14, 16. It was getting crazy. How did that feel?
Well, it felt a little bit desperate because I was digging for the gateway while I was trying to control the board with lesser tools. So and because I don't have any draw cards, I need to rely on playing efficiently. And but like George said, at that moment, I felt that the game was really slipping away because he was able to get 2 keys.
Yeah.
And the deck has really good hammer control, and since I can stall at least one turn, I would need to get to be in the driving seat on that game, which usually happens against Tenebris if you can manage the first couple of addies that come to the board and just forge. At one point, I could have forged the first key if I played the Dust Pixie, and I decided to discard it because we were in the not the early game, but I think we were 0 keys to on both sides, and I felt that as soon as I got the gateway arise combo, I could, because both red alerts were discarded on the first turn or second turn.
Yeah.
Second. Yeah, I felt that I could have had a good chance if I got the gateway soon to forge at 6 and then have a lot of amber to face the cycle of George's deck, which is the tricky part.
I think watching it as well, the Gateway Arise play when it came really kind of changed the way the match was going at that point. But we just, watching it, had the feeling that it was just a little bit too late to really change it enough. Because
it definitely changed it from my perspective. I mean, like I said, I was waiting for it to happen a bit earlier. I think if it had, I think it'd have been an incredibly close game, and I think Felipe might have won that one, to be honest. Just because if he'd have done it that little bit earlier, like I say, I was deadly disappointed to have to discard both the red alerts on that early turn. I kind of identified that if I'd got one later, I was probably going to hold it, waiting for the gateway and Arise, just so that if he did happen to play all of his creatures down, which obviously you played around, like I say at the end, it would have even so got me something. If you drop the drum ball, at least I've got a card that could get rid of it. But just so early on, particularly given how I think that I had 2 warded creatures on the board at the time, and the Ingram was just going to keep warding stuff. I figured I had to throw it away to just get a bit more efficiency and move through the deck, and hopefully redraw them again quickly. But I think if you'd have got that disc board out early, short of me trying to re-establish a board, but I'd have struggled done. I think it'd have been a very different outcome to the game. So in the end, I just decided to do that, and then just try and get to 3 keys as quickly as I could. Really, same thing. Because I mean, I believe I could have stopped your second key. I was holding a small Logos term, but it was a choice between that or calling remember it now. But anyway, or pushing for my second and third, and red alerting your or removing some of your board, and then basically forcing you to expand your disboard a bit.
Yeah, that was what I was hoping you've done, so I could just cycle my deck and maybe get the Arise again. But
that's what I was worried about. Yeah.
And I had a really tough choice, but that in the end was not the greatest. There was one turn that I played Poltergeist for the Ember and used it on my Long Fuse Mines. And again, it was I just thought I only killed a Daughter, and I think I then fought the Group Think Tank, which is a great weapon against my deck. But I did it because at that moment I thought, if I don't need this, if I get the gateways, one of the gateways, and if I don't get the gateways, I'm just done here. So I thought that one Ember would be better than a card that would not have any usage on a close game there. Because if you have a board, these creatures can take care of them, and so I thought that killing Daughter, that would live for at least another couple of turns and giving you a lot of efficiency, and getting the Group Think Tank there would be better than just discarding the Poltergeist.
Fantastic. Well, it was a fantastic set of games to watch, and really well played to both of you. And it's just left for me to thank you both for taking the time to talk to us after this, and to wish you both really good luck in the next rounds of the league. Thank you so much.